Aloha and welcome to Island Connections. I'm Ibrahim Aoudé. Topic for this program is passing on the baton. And we have with us to have this conversation, Tengan, he's Department Chair of Ethnic Studies, Monisha Das-Gupta, previous Chair and Professor at Ethnic Studies and Women's Studies, and then Rod Labrador, he's the incoming Chair of Ethnic Studies beginning next academic year, fall 2022. So welcome you all for coming over to have this kind of conversation. And, you know, just to let the viewers know that passing on the baton, it's about Island Connections, because this will be the last semester for me as executive producer and host of Island Connections, and the department will take it over. And for that, I want to ask Ty to begin the discussion in terms of your views and all of that, and what kind of plans you had for this, and then for the you know, Island Connections. You might even want to change the name, etc. You know, it's all yours. I'm passing on the baton. Go ahead, Ty.
All right. Well, first off, mahalo, Ibrahim, for your many years of labor on this, for creating this space. At the time, really before the internet was the place to view this on YouTube, right? You know, and with Olelo and with your years of dedication, it's such a critically important archive for us that we can go back to. And so, you know, first I just really encourage all the viewers to go through those archives that we now have on YouTube. Such really important documenting of the struggles of people of Hawaiʻi and beyond in the Pacific and globally. So just mahalo for your dedication and for creating this space. And it's just such a treasure for all of us. But mahalo.
It's been a pleasure, and I still have like this show and 2 more shows before I finish the semester. And I want to thank Erica, everything actually, the director, the camera woman. She trained a lot of people in her outfit to do camera work and production and all that kind of stuff. So thank you, Erica. And so it's been 20 years with her, including this semester. So it's, you know, it's a long haul. And it was a pleasure for me. And I thought it was politically important to carry on the baton before I pass it on. So anyway,
you know, on that note, you know, if you really have passed it on, then let me take the one and only opportunity I'm going to have to interview you. And could you tell us a little bit about how all of this started and when and why?
Well, just like everything else with me, it was by chance. And so one day, Noel Kent, he's retired now, he's Professor Emeritus. He said, Ibrahim, you know, Hawaiian studies and, you know, IT people, there's this program, and they want like someone to, there's a slot and they want to have a program. So why don't you go and see what's happening with it? I said, okay. So I went, and the rest is, we're here.
And what was your original idea for this program? What were you trying to accomplish? What kind of conversation? Is it the
Yeah.
first Friday conversations that you said were the Hawaiian studies?
The Hawaiian studies, no,
or,
it was another
one was-
program, but it has been discontinued. It's no longer there for several years, I think. Erica would know more about that. But the thing is that I figured out, well, this is a good idea. We can, promote certain topics, etc., and through that promote ethnic studies as the one putting on those kind of topics. So we did a lot of interviews of students in ethnic studies, professors talking about programs, etc., etc. We talked about globalization and its impact on the local scene here. And in fact, you, Ty, used that in some of your classes, the one on globalization, as I remember several times. So we talked about Mauna Kea, we talked about all kinds of Hawaiian issues, indigenous issues. We talked about promoting civic engagement, service learning, because we had the main footprint on that. And in fact, we were the ones who really created this kind of civic engagement prior to something called service learning, etc. We used to do that long time ago, and that's how ethnic studies became a program and later on a department, because of that dealing with the community and really organically being linked with it. And of course, like you have all kinds of activities in the community, which is academic and practical. There are a lot of people like, Rod, Monisha, of course. Everyone is really active. Daviana McGregor, and especially now with the before with Kaho'olawe and all of that, and she still leads tours, student trips to Kaho'olawe, etc. And now she's the director of the Center for Oral History that came back to the fold of ethnic studies, and all of that. So we try to do justice to what is happening in Hawaii and in the Pacific as well. We had like all kinds of programs on the Pacific, etc., and also the Middle East and on globalization and all kinds of things, American, so to speak, or US, let's say, and things that really impact Hawaii. And to show with all this kind of global outlook, to show how Hawaii is not as some people think about it as the backwater, of empire, so to speak, but it is at the front of empire, given all the bases and all of these things, military and bases and installations in the state of Hawaii, etc. So it really had a lot of impact on what's happening in Africa and the Middle East and Southeast Asia and all of that. So how Hawaii is central to the U.S. empire, and how that might affect Hawaii mostly adversely, I think, especially when I see shut down Red Hill for good behind you, which is amazing. They're supposed to protect us from foreign invasions, and there is an invasion right there, in those containers or whatever you call them. So anyway, I stop there.
Mahalo, Ibrahim. And let me bring in our colleagues here and make this more of a talk story. But I also, again, just say it's been an honor to be a part of these conversations and to be included, and really have been inspired by all of your leadership, not only on the program but also as chair previously, and now very active emeritus professor.
Thank you.
let me pass the baton, as it were, to Monisha. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is what this is lateral or back and forth. Anyways, Monisha, why don't you jump in here and get your chance at grilling Ibrahim?
So, Ibrahim, this program has been very important, a sort of signature of our department. And when we used to meet in person, I think of, how we would gather in the resource room and talk story. And then, Erica would come with all her equipment and film us. So, definitely a lot of nostalgia. And I think the breaking news for me was that the baton is going to be passed. I was not aware of that, and I was more in the loss of island connections, but I don't have to. So that's super exciting, and I'm sure that Rod and Ethan will bring, a fresh outlook and reimagine the program in another way. But I've always enjoyed the conversations that we've had on this program, and also your commitment to lifting up the Middle East and having those conversations about Palestine. Those are not conversations that people usually associate with Hawaii. And yet we are, doing so much work here to figure out how to build solidarities. And I'm really excited about Sumaya Awad's visit at the end of this week. I had attended a sort of meet and greet with her in the fall, and she really combines sort of a socialist vision, commitment to labor, and Palestinian struggles in a beautiful way. And it made me think of you and the work that you have done, both in terms of our curriculum and in terms of Island Connections, sort of, really focusing on those issues. And, even as, Ukraine is sort of, unfolding, I was very interested to sort of here, I was like, I'm sure Ibrahim would have done a program on, some comparative kind of, outlook on how war is covered and how it is, how refugee-ness is portrayed in these different, in Europe versus the Middle East. So these were the thoughts that were going through my mind as I was thinking about Island Connections this morning.
Yeah, thank you. But before I comment on this, Erica tells me like the Hawaiian Studies program was done by Lilikala Kame'elehiva and Kanalu Young, the late Kanalu Young. And in fact, I remember like meeting with Kanalu as well, and IT guys on the first meeting, at the first meeting for that. And the program was called Kai Evalu, so just thanks, Erica, for that. Yeah, I mean, there is going to be, I want to begin answering or commenting on what you said with this, that on March 25th, 26th, next month, that is, because today is the 28th of February, we have a conference, Arab Studies Quarterly Conference at the University of Hawaii, and it's co-sponsored by the Department of Ethnic Studies, College of Social Sciences, and the Center for the Study of the Muslim and Arab Worlds at California State University, San Bernardino. And there will be a few panels on the global situation and US and all of that. So that would be an interesting thing. A plenary session on the struggle for Palestinian independence and sovereignty. We have like Miko Peled, Israeli, who calls himself a Palestinian. And he had done several books and a lot of work on Palestine, etc. He was a Zionist. He no longer is a Zionist a long time ago because he figured out what's really going on through his direct experience, you know. So anyway, and then we have a number of people who will be on the plenary session. There's Rabab Abdel Hadi, famous or renowned for her fight for you know, equality and justice for Palestine and justice for anyone anywhere in the world, you know. So we have you know, that happening. And so far as the Ukraine is concerned, you know, I mean, I know the United States is in support of the Ukraine, but that is interesting in a sense, but not surprising to me, because the US has always been on the wrong side of the Great Divide, you know. And knowing that the president of Ukraine is Israeli citizen as well, and the prime minister is an Israeli citizen, and they've voted at the United Nations against Palestinian statehood and all of that kind of stuff. So I have no good feelings for them, you see. And the way like Ukrainian troops, paratroops fought, you know, in like Afghanistan and other places, etc., along with the United States and so on. So I'm not in support of the Ukraine. Doesn't mean I'm in support of the Russians, so to speak. But this is a huge topic that needs to be discussed. Perhaps we might have a panel. I mean, not at the conference, but or you know, or something at the Department of Ethnic Studies at some point, talking about that. You know, I don't know. It's up to you guys. And but it's an important topic, and I'll be writing. I'll be writing about it too, as well. You know, for not an academic paper, so to speak, but academic analysis for activists and people who are interested in social and political change in this country and around the world in terms of like justice and freedom and liberty for all. Thank you.
I'm going to take the baton, even though
yes,
Monisha didn't pass
please.
it.
Yeah.
But echoing what Ty and Monisha said, I wanted to thank you, Ibrahim, for all the years of dedication, all the years of commitment that you've put into Island Connections, to the department, to the local communities, and also trying to get us through this program and through the department, thinking about our place in the, like you're talking about, in the broader global community. And so thank you for all that. Know that we've appreciated all the hard work that you've done all over the years. I also wanted to thank you for embracing the new technologies, since you've been doing this program for 2 decades, right? Doing the stuff on YouTube, putting all of these things, I think, in ways that trying to get a wider circulation to have this discussion. So thank you for all that. And I was going to borrow from what Ty did earlier, because as we think about what Island Connections will look like in the future, I still wanted to kind of think about what you're doing now, what you kind of started with. And if you could tell us, you know, if were there particular times or particular guests where they just kind of stand out for you, and or particular kinds of issues that stand out for you, as we're thinking about, well, what is this going to look like going forward?
Yeah, actually, indigenous issues do stand because this is the solid rock that we stand on as a program as well. I mean, you know, as a department and as a program like Island Connections. And we've done multiple ones. I mean, I don't remember how many, but so many. And each time, like I would interview indigenous people, I'm amazed at the not only dedication, but the knowledge that they have, etc., in terms of fighting for their own rights, etc. And, I'm being an indigenous person as well, not in Hawaii, of course, but, Palestinian. So that resonates automatically and organically, yeah. So actually, without, I'm just gonna say straightforward. Like in terms of people who really stand out, and I'm just gonna, as I said, straight, Thai, Monisha, the ones that stand out because of their knowledge and their dedication to everything that is important, for us, not only at the department, but in Hawaii. I mean, Thai's history speaks for itself. Monisha's as well, with the labor union, with immigrants, etc. So these are like important topics: immigrants, labor unions, indigenous issues, Mauna Kea, etc. So these are important ones. I interviewed in terms of globalization and someone who knows a lot of globalization, and that's regardless whether he and I disagree or agree. We agree on a lot of stuff, which is Manfred Steger. He's written, I don't know, 20 books on globalization, etc., and other things related to it. He has a lot of information, etc., and he's done his work. So he would be one important person, I think, who stands out. And Cynthia Franklin, professor of English, her continuous struggle for justice globally, I mean, in Hawaii, Palestine, elsewhere, and her leadership for the question of divestment, BDS, boycott, divestment, sanctions of the state of Israel and Palestine because of its, inhumane, bad treatment of Palestinians, demolishing homes, kicking people out of their homes, and putting some Israelis who, some of them would have come like recently to Palestine, and they take over the place, etc. So that even like international organizations, Human Rights Watch, for instance, really condemned Israel for that, these things. But, Israel being supported by the United States can do no wrong, even if you see them killing Palestinians every day, just shooting them on the streets without any provocation, etc. I mean, I can't talk a lot about that, but this is the honest truth. So someone like Cynthia Franklin would be very important in this regard. A lot of other people, some of them who passed on, who have like a lot of love for Hawaii, and also a lot of knowledge, etc. So there's a lot of them, that one can think of Jonathan Okamura in terms of racism and justice and discrimination, etc., in Hawaii, and he's specialized in Hawaii. I mean, he's written a lot of books on that. I interviewed you a few times, a couple of times, I think, and I was very much interested in the way you approach things regarding, the media and so on. And that's why it would be important when you folks take over this program, move it in directions that I couldn't have moved it for all kinds of reasons. And to relate those kinds of things to the curriculum in the Department of Ethnic Studies. So I want to ask you, any ideas on that? I know you have ideas, but what can you share with us?
So I think you're asking me, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, but before I get to that, since I have the three of you here, I did want to thank the three of you as the past three chairs of our department, really to thank you all for really taking care of our department, making sure that our department not only survives, but is thriving, that our department grows, and all of the work and all of the dedication that all three of you have put into the department, I think is really kind of reflective in the kind of students that that have been coming through our department and our continued community engagement. So thank you all for all of that. And I'm a little worried in terms of what it's going to happen once August 1st kicks in. But in terms of this program, I actually wanted to turn that back to you, since we've had 20 years of archive, 20 years of resources that we've been using in our classes, and like you said, connecting it with the curriculum. And I think all of us have been using your program in our classes to address issues and things. And but what I wanted to do is, since it's the three of you here, and we have the past 2 decades of ethnic studies right here in our Zoom session, what is it that you would want? What is it that you would want for Island Connections? Where would you want it to go? Given this is our 20 years of archives, what would you want to see in the next 5, 10, 20 years?
Can I, because, I've been thinking about other people, and so on, people who have importance in terms of the foundation of ethnic studies, etc. Marion Kelly, who late Marion Kelly, who trailblazed a whole subfield in anthropology on Hawaii. She was important in the founding of ethnic studies, and I interviewed her a few times or several times, and so she stands out like that. Another one is Akwan Makarath in terms of labor and all of that, and she was a great supporter. And I know there's a lot of others that we can talk about, but I just wanted to mention those as well. I stop here. I let the other chairs and previous chairs talk about what, answer your question.
Thanks. If the question is specifically with the archive of the past shows, is that more of the question, Rod?
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah, in terms of, because I'm thinking in terms of continuity.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
I think it would be really nice to see, how they put those little short clips of episodes up on social media, the short, easy, digestible kind of little, whatever, 2-3 minute segments from some of these key people that you just noted, Ibrahim, whether it's with Marion or AQ or somebody, and those ones that really resonate today in important ways, long-standing issues that they were addressing around Hawaiian rights, around military abuses of the land, around the struggles of labor and unions. Those are still ongoing, right? So getting those voices to speak in important ways to the present, I think would be one cool thing to see. And because it is such a rich archive, and it deserves to to be circulated more. And I think I don't have that social media savvy or that technical know-how. So again, this is on my list of, if you're asking, Rod, things I like to see with this archive in particular. How can we use it more to engage and then speak to many issues that we're still struggling with. So that's a short answer for me. And passing the baton again to Monisha.
That's such a great idea, Ty, to sort of do those digestible clips, especially, once you actually see the person talking, especially persons who have passed, like Marian Kelly. I know that she had great energy, and these comes out, her energy even comes out in the photographs that we have of her, right? I think that would be so inspiring. And, I think all of us were very fortunate to see Akwan in action. I remember coming in 2002 and, in the middle of the anti-war protests, and Akwan was just, so searing in her critique and also in inspiring us to, look at US empire and the ways in which it operates, from here. So I think that's a wonderful, idea to for our students to get that sense of legacy, that these are our roots. And I was just revisiting your and Deviana's book chapter in A Nation Rising, and it's just just the way in which we are entrenched in the community is I think it's unmatched. And that's something that I'm hoping that we will be able to continue on in, next hire as the people who are still here. It's such an important piece. And, Deviana has really kind of taken the COH in these, really visible directions that are also creating, very rich archives. That has been such a exciting development in our department. And I also wanted to give a shout out to Rod for, forging our ties with the College of Education. Right now I'm working very closely with them on a search, and it's so important to, become familiar with their curriculum and how it's serving our students and, their focus on social justice. So I think that, these ideas that we have developed, because there are so many roadblocks to our having our own, post-graduation programs, to have very rich collaborations across, colleges. I think that these ways of, very strategic ways of building ties, they have been part of our thriving in this, extremely neoliberal environment.
Yeah, can I say something also regarding, it's not only like, ethnic studies and its role, et cetera, but the people that has influenced over time, our students, et cetera. Like I was, of course, I interviewed Daviana several times, especially regarding the Center for Oral History, etc. But I once interviewed twice. I interviewed her and her daughter, Rosie Allegado, who's a scientist teaching at a School of Earth and Ocean and this kind of stuff, technology, whatever, SOEST. And she says, although like she deals with science and all of that, that she has in the back of her mind and as like a framework, theoretical framework, etc., as ethnic studies, because she grew up in ethnic studies. Actually, I knew her from when she was a couple of years old, if not before. And so she's a scientist now. So this is the new generation. In fact, at the conference that we're going to have at the Business Administration Building on those days I mentioned, 25th, 26th of March, we have several indigenous Hawaiians and non-indigenous Hawaiians, local people who will be involved in these panels, and a bunch of them are, our students or very close to ethnic studies over time, etc. Ihilani, for instance, would be one on the panel, on one of the panels, for instance. So, so that's the kind of thing. The other, the other thing, like one of the interviews with Rosie Allegado and Daviana McGregor was in memoriam of Dean Allegado, who was, teaching for us here, and I've known him since like 1975. I had known him until his passing a year ago, and he was someone who really did a lot as a department chair, and not as a department chair, but also as a department chair. He did a lot to connect the community, ethnic studies with the community, and so forth. So before he left, he retired. I interviewed him a few times here on Island Connections, etc. So all these kinds of connections are very important. And how I came up with the term Island Connections, it was also by chance. I was thinking about it, and all of a sudden, oops, that's it. Island Connections. So anyway, I stopped here.
Well, I was gonna just say that was, I think, one of the ways we find continuity with the directions that you have set in our own sort of thinking, I guess, since around 2015 or so. We've really been focused on those oceanic connections, and again, it is very much a part of this continuity with thinking in terms of how do we fortify those solidarities in our islands, in our oceans, as people whose cultures, histories, politics are very fundamentally shaped in these places in important ways for really the rest of the world, as you've noted. And so it's great that we can do that and also explore those new avenues that include different media and other kinds of creative connections that I think is a lot of what we've been discussing. I mean, I think finally maybe getting to your question about where things might be going, and this is more to kind of set Rod up, but we have seen, especially with Rod, Ethan, also our former graduate assistant and now lecturer, Ruben, Ethan Caldwell, Ruben Campos, a really important connection with artists here whose work really speaks to those themes of social justice, and in the Pauhana sessions that Rod and the group have been curating. So I know that that's only one part. There's also another effort that I think was that the outgrowth of inside the Ethnic Studies studio, which maybe more Rod could speak to, again, bringing those artists to the campus to engage and connect again with our students. But maybe Rod, could you talk a little bit about how some of that is or is not going to be being drawn into our rethinking with Island Connections?
Yeah, so part of it is just really kind of thinking about where Island Connections has been, where it is now, and really kind of thinking about what it can be or what we want it to be. But I think I operate a little bit like Ibrahim, where, a little serendipitous to come up with Island Connections, but it explains so much, right? Where in terms of looking at connections, thinking about building solidarities, building community, but looking at the importance of islands, and with our new focus on Oceania and the oceanic, I think that also is something that's really going to be kind of important. How do we think about things like movements and mobility, right? So movements like the classes that Ibrahim used to teach in terms of people's struggle, but also in terms of the kinds of work that Monisha does in terms of migration, the movement of people, right? And then the kind of where that all kind of meets, but then looking at things, so like with my own work and looking at movement and mobility when it comes to identity making and diaspora, right? All of that. And so I wanted to kind of think about all of those things. But I did, before I kind of hit the inside the ethnic studies studio and Pauhana sessions that Ty like so wonderfully teed up for me, I did want to kind of also say, since Ibrahim was talking about Dean Aligado, who was my predecessor, I think I'm going to have a similar kind of approach to this. I knew Dean was this amazing and like this really important community member in Hawaii. He and I were from the same hometown in the Philippines. I knew him when I was a grad student. I knew what kind of importance that he had for the local community, for the university. And when I came into the position, I knew I could not do what Dean did. And I had no delusions of being able to kind of do anything that he had done in the community and in the department. And I think that's going to be my same approach. Ibrahim already has kind of laid the groundwork for all of this. And I know I can't replicate any of the wonderful things that he's done. But some of the things that we have been thinking about is looking at the stuff that Ibrahim was doing already, where looking at how do we connect, how do we connect stuff, what's going on here to what's going on in the Middle East, what's going on in South Asia, what's going on. So with Ethan's work in Okinawa and Japan, right? Looking at those kinds of things. And then some of the things that Ty was saying in terms of the new technologies, whether we're talking about Instagram or looking at creatives like Rich's work, looking at sound and looking at all of these kinds of things. But part of the idea is maybe if we can look at creatives, right? How are folks who are artists, and we have a lot of students who are artists, a lot of students who are involved in resistance movements that are using their art. How can we tap into that to address these larger kind of political economic issues, these global issues, right? Thinking about not only what they're producing as artists, but then how are they thinking about their art? How are they thinking about these larger politics? And with what I was doing before in terms of inside the ethnic studies studio, that really was this idea of I wanted to bring the community of artists in the university, right? To one of the things that our department tries to do is break that community university divide. And what I wanted to do was break that barrier, but do that with the artist community. And I wanted to both kind of like say, you have these artists who are also community scholars, right? They're thinking very deeply about the work that they're doing, but bring them into our space as well as us going to where they're performing, where they're having exhibits and things. And so that was the idea. Where Pauhana Sessions comes in is a lot of folks were like, hey, you're doing a lot of stuff on campus, but why aren't you doing stuff in the community? And so that's when we started to partner more with other organizations, local businesses, to have these events and things out in the community. So then that was us really putting ethnic studies in the community, ethnic studies as creativity, ethnic studies as artistry, ethnic studies as protest art, right? Putting that in the community and kind of building with people in that sense. And so part of the thing that we're thinking about is really how can we incorporate some of that into Island Connections, right?
Yeah,
how can we, yeah.
No, sorry. Go ahead. No, I just wanted to say two things on that. One of the things would be to continue the relationship, which is organic. I keep using that term because it is, with civic engagement and service learning, like Ula, is very important. Ula Hasager is very important in that, and she's wonderful in terms of those kinds of communities, Pacific Island communities, indigenous communities, local communities, that one. And then I have a secret to tell Rod. when Dina and I sometimes would talk, you know, the late comrade Dean Allegado would talk, we would mention you, Rod, you know, and then when we mention you, we smile, because in the back of our head, we always thought that you would be wonderful coming into ethnic studies. So I'm glad you were at ethnic studies, you know. So I just wanted to say that, like, we were smiling, and every time we bring up your name in our conversation, you know.
Well, I used, since Dean and I were from the same hometown in the Philippines, I used to always tell everybody I was his son. So. but
so anyway, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Rod, I also wanted to, you know, join in making 2 points, going to, you know, sort of speaking to what you were saying and what Ibrahim was saying. One is that, you know, I have so much respect for you from the very beginning. You know, just saying that, you know, Dean left very big shoes to fill. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do my own thing. And you have really taken it in these wonderful directions and pulling in students in ways that, you know, really speak to their interests. So, you know, to do that requires a lot of courage and a lot of self-confidence. So thank you for doing that. And I'm teaching immigration to Hawaii and the US this semester. And, you know, I start with 4 weeks of just being rooted in the Pacific. And I just feel that there is so much more new, exciting, critical scholarship. I mean, building on Hau'ofa, which we teach across the board, and have really been enjoying it. And also, you know, using, you know, spoken word artists in the diaspora, like Teresia Siagatonu, you know, or, you know, our own Kathy, you know, Jitnal Kijner. And students get really fired up by that. You know, I've just recognizing that how much good scholarship and critical scholarship is coming out of Hawaii. I've been enjoying teaching Beyond Ethnicity, and your article in particular on local humor. You know, it really speaks to students in a way that, you know, other things don't. They seem a little more remote to them. So, you know, I just wanted to share that, you know, just even to feature some of the wonderful scholarship that is, you know, coming out of our university.
Yeah. Another thing, like, you know, I just want to plug in the conference again. Like, I sent an email for everyone in ethnic studies, you know, if they could participate. Like, Noel has registered, Noel Kent has registered, you know, and he's been very active in some of these main events that are happening now. You know, he's with this Sabil organization that deals with the Palestinian issue and tries to relate the local issue to the Palestinian issue and the indigenous issue to the Palestinian issue. So he registered, and you know, I did a number of you know, programs in which he participated, and you know, so just like all of us at Ethnic Studies have been very active in those matters. Not like one guy not active and the other is. Everyone has been active. So. It'll be good to involve Noel in some of those things as well. You know, he would be wonderful as well. So, Ty, you haven't spoken in a while. So.
No, I just going back to also recognizing some of the really critical, important work that Rod has done. Especially as it links to our department, it's not only that these Pauhana sessions were really connecting students with community, but really drawing in more students into our majors, as he was also the undergraduate advisor. And you know, this was certainly a concerted effort on all of our parts as a department to really increase majors, which really had dropped to some worrying numbers at one point, but Rod has been really just phenomenal at meeting the needs of students, showing them that drive for social justice and their own creative spirit can kind of come together in the work that they're doing with us. And so at one point, I don't know, when was it, some point in the 2000s or early 2010s, we were at almost like 17 majors, but we went up to 50, in the last couple of years. And then really that growth really is shown over the time that Rod joined us around 2009 to really help us to stand up the project that is ethnic studies. And so just want to really commend him, because now that I'm stepping into that advisor role, I see how much work there is to do as an advisor. I also do see the ways in which that space, whether it's hip hop or any of the other creative arts that Rod has really brought to us, is one that attracts our students and gives them a voice, and that we see them use that voice in the community. And whether it's right now at this moment with Red Hill, Kapukaki is the Hawaiian name, or earlier, right before the pandemic, with the Mauna, the Mauna movement, right, and Mauna Kea, where I was fortunate to accompany Pauhana sessions to the Mauna to record some of the Mauna rap challenges with our own majors who were there, and as well as others who were taking that stand as kia'i for the Mauna. So those kinds of things I'm really excited to see in the next generation and iteration of Island Connections, as well as much more.
I think you're all a little too much. You're giving me too much credit. I think it's way, everybody's been involved with it, right? In terms of making sure that we're all available for our students, right? What I usually tell our students is that we're all there. And as what Ibrahim has been talking about, we're all involved in the community. We're all actually living what we say we do in ethnic studies in terms of being involved in the community. And so our students see that. Our students see the kind of energy that we all bring into our classrooms, right? I think it's just been really, in terms of everybody putting in the work to make sure that our students feel like they have a space, right? Whether it's a space to kind of think about who they are and what that means in terms of broader kind of the global implications of that, to even just, what does it mean to be Filipino growing up in Kalihi, or, figuring out all of these things. But I think all of us need a pat in the back for the work that we've been putting in for the past 10, 15 years in terms of making sure that our department, as I said earlier, is really really strong, and making sure that the students know that they have a place on campus where a lot of students, when they come to us, they're really kind of thinking about these things. And I think our classrooms, our offices, our EQ room, right? These are spaces for them to be able to kind of think through, talk through stuff. And I think that's been a really important part of why we've been getting more majors, why we've been getting more certificate students, because the students, especially during this time of the pandemic too, the students are looking for community. They're looking for a space. And I think we really do a really good job of making sure that the students have a place on campus and that they have this space to allow themselves to really kind of be brave and vulnerable and all of these things that they're feeling to. And I think we provide that space where we're not judgy, we're not, but we're there to be supportive and to be encouraging. So I think that's all of us. But Ty, you can have my blue chair in my office. You know why? The students spend lots of time talking.
It's a lazy chair is good, and then they get energy talking to you. Anyway. So,
what about the food?
And the food
We
and
also
the
feed our
music,
students.
Yeah,
coffee, music.
yeah, poo-poos, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I just want to say something. I'm sure, like, during the meetings, faculty meetings, or steering committee meetings, we have that in the back of our head, so to speak. But regarding, like, continually reviewing the vision and the mission, and make sure, like, we are always, like, one of the visions that we moved forward with, thanks to Thai, was the question of Pacific connections, right? And I still remember the compass, Thai, God compass. So, which is very good. So, just like to continually do check on the vision and the mission, and try and put them in such a way that they keep moving us forward, not at at breakneck speed, but at a good speed, that we are always in tune with the social reality of Hawaii, and in a global context. Yeah. So that's all I wanted to do. So actually, we have 3 minutes to go. So we have like 1 minute for each of you. Thai.
All right. Well, again, it's been a privilege to be a part of this department, to be a part of all of the efforts to really make our scholarship matter in the community, to help to strengthen those old connections and forge new ones, and the role that this program has played, and as well as what it will continue to play, are things I'm very happy to continue to support. In my very brief moment here in the transition, now that the baton is being handed off in my last semester as chair, I will do what I can to make sure it's a seamless transition to Rod when he comes in.
Good. So we have less than 2 minutes, I'm told by Erica. So Monisha.
Same. I just want to tell Rod that, in being chair, it's really a privilege to be a chair of ethnic studies. It really is. And
As you laugh.
I also wanted to say that, Thai's vision of Hoa, which, is now a really beautiful piece in Amerasia. I'm teaching it this week in immigration to Hawaii and the US. And it's so wonderful to see that metaphor being developed in that piece, Thai. So that's the connection, and that's the binding that I want to keep going in this department.
We have less than a minute. Rod?
Well, I just want to thank you all again. Thank you, Ibrahim, Monisha, and Thai, for really kind of setting everything up for me as I get ready to take over the department, I guess, the reins, the baton, passing on the baton. I just hope I don't drop it.
Don't worry.
We're going to go sprint to the finish line and keep going. Yeah. But thank you, Ibrahim, too, for everything you've done for Island Connections.
Thank you very much. We're flat out of time. Thank you very much for all of you. It's been a good discussion. I enjoyed it. And thanks for all your kind words for me, and mahalo nui loa for our viewers, and see you next month. Aloha.